My name is Lauren Carter, 33 years old, a high school art teacher in Seattle. That morning, I held the pregnancy test in my hand, tears streaming down my face as 2 pink lines appeared after 3 years of hoping. But just then, an anonymous email popped up on my phone screen with a picture of my husband in another woman's arms, in the very hotel where he once proposed to me. I didn't know what took my breath away more, the joy of becoming a mother, or the stab in the heart from the man who once swore he'd never leave me. Have you ever received good news and cruel news at the exact same time? If you've ever been betrayed at the very moment you thought you were most loved, leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to hear the rest of this unexpected story, where I didn't just lose a husband. I found myself in a way no one saw coming. Because truth is, everything was only just beginning. I met Ethan in my senior year of college, in an elective art class he'd signed up for, just to kill time. He sat next to me on the first day, wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt, his hair still damp from a rushed shower, and asked with surprising honesty, "Do you know how to draw left-hand?" "I'm left-handed, but this charcoal pencil isn't cooperating." I laughed, and I hadn't stopped laughing since that day. Ethan wasn't the type of guy I thought I'd fall for. He wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, didn't pull grand romantic gestures. But he listened, fully and kindly. When I told him about my dream of opening an art studio for autistic kids, he didn't brush it off like others had. He asked, "Do you want me to help you build a financial plan for that?" I used to call him my little hero, not because he did anything big, but because he made the little things in me feel worth protecting. We got married 2 years later, in a small ceremony surrounded by lavender fields in Oregon. My mom gave me a handkerchief embroidered with the letter L in silver thread. Ethan read his vows in the soft light of dusk. "I don't promise to always be right, but I promise to always listen and to love you, even the parts you struggle to love in yourself." I believed him, every word, every syllable. It took us nearly 3 years to accept the truth that having a child wouldn't be as easy as we'd dreamed. I used to count down to each ovulation day, check my temperature every morning, wait on each cycle with fragile hope. Once, I cried through the night in the bathroom, and Ethan just sat outside the door, silent, until he handed me a mug of hot cocoa at dawn. "You don't have to be strong by yourself," he whispered, his hand over mine. "I'm here." And I truly thought, if any man was meant to be a father, it was Ethan. Last year, after our 3rd failed IVF attempt, I told Ethan maybe we should take a break. He nodded immediately, no complaints. He simply pulled me into his arms and let me fall asleep. I knew he was hurting too, but he never used that as an excuse to pull away. Or, at least I used to think so. Then Ethan got promoted. A huge step. Regional director at a booming tech company on the West Coast. He started traveling more, Zoom meetings stretching past midnight, replying to emails during dinner. At first I was proud of him. Ethan deserved this opportunity. He was smart, organized, calm under pressure. But slowly I realized I was having dinner alone, far too often. He came home late, said he was exhausted, and went to bed before I did. I asked questions, not out of suspicion, but out of missing him. Ethan always had very reasonable answers. I never thought to check his schedule. I wasn't that kind of person. I trusted my husband. A few weeks ago, I threw Ethan a 35th birthday party. A small but thoughtful evening. Close friends, his favorite chocolate cake, and a few dishes I'd learned to make just for him. I had a special gift prepared. Not something expensive, but a portrait I'd been secretly working on for over a month. The 2 of us standing in front of the log cabin by Lake Tahoe we'd once dreamed of taking our kids to every summer. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in our bedroom, planning to give it to him after the party, along with the news, "Ethan, I'm pregnant." But Ethan never showed up. He called at 6 p.m., his voice rushed. "I'm stuck in meetings in Portland. There's an issue with the new project, can't get out early. Please don't wait for me, okay?" "It's all right. Work comes first." I hung up and kept setting the table like nothing had happened. I told our friends. "Ethan sends his apologies and will be late." I toasted to his birthday with a hollow heart. That night, I ate a slice of birthday cake alone in the living room, watching the candle burn all the way down without making a single wish. because what I used to wish for, a family, felt like it had finally been within reach. I didn't know that very night, Ethan was with someone else. In the same hotel room where he once kissed me under fireworks and said, "I can't imagine my life without you." And I didn't know an even crueler truth was waiting ahead. That afternoon, I was in class helping a student named Lily fix her drawing. She was the shy one who always hid in the corner. When my phone buzzed, an unknown number, no area code. I almost ignored it, but something didn't sit right. I answered with 1 second left on the timer. "Lauren Carter?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. So calm I thought I misheard her. "Yes," I replied, a little hesitant. A short pause. "If you think Ethan truly loves you, ask him about Chloe Matthews and that Portland business trip last week." "Sorry, who's calling?" "I can't say, but you should know, that man isn't who you think he is." The call ended. I stood frozen in the art room, my hand still gripping the blue-colored pencil like it could anchor me to reality. Chloe Matthews? I'd never heard that name. And Portland. That was the business trip Ethan said he couldn't miss on his own birthday. I thought maybe it was a prank, or some student messing around with hacked phones, or a jealous ex. I tried to rationalize it. I forced myself not to react. No texting, no calling Ethan. I quietly finished the class, walked each student out, smiled, locked the door like any normal day. But on the way home, as I stopped at a red light near our house, my phone buzzed again. New email. No subject, one line. "If you still want to believe, look." Attached were 4 photos. I didn't open them right away. I waited until I got home, locked the door, pulled the curtains closed like the daylight itself might witness what I was about to see. First photo, Ethan sitting across from a blonde woman at a softly lit restaurant, their hands touching on the table. He was smiling, that crooked, tilted smile he used to give me when saying something silly just to make me laugh. Second photo, the two of them standing outside the restaurant, his arm wrapped around her waist. Third photo, in front of a hotel, a luxury one with a glass facade. I recognized it instantly. It was where Ethan had proposed to me 5 years ago. Room 908, at sunset, overlooking the Willamette River. Fourth photo. The two of them walking into the elevator, shoulder to shoulder, her head resting on his shoulder. And he didn't pull away. I let the phone slip onto the sofa, feeling like someone had grabbed my chest and yanked it into a black hole. Everything around me, the desk lamp, the still warm teacup, the wedding photo on the wall, blurred, weightless. I wrapped my arms around my belly, where the baby Ethan didn't know about was quietly growing. Tiny, nameless, untouched by pain, and I held it like I could shield us both from the truth waiting outside. I reopened the email, checked the sender. Nothing but a string of random characters, no trace. I tried reverse searching the photos. No metadata, no timestamps. Whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. And then I remembered the way Ethan looked when I asked about Portland. "Was it fun?" I'd asked, casually. He'd only shrugged. "All meetings, you know how it is, nothing special." So smooth, it slipped right past me. I called Rachel, my best friend since high school, but hung up before the first ring finished. I couldn't say it out loud, not because I feared pity, but because once I said it, it would be real, and I wasn't ready to live in a world where Ethan wasn't who I believed he was. I opened my laptop, typed in the name, Chloe Matthews. Hundreds of results popped up, but I recognized her face the moment I saw it on the website for a nonprofit called Brighter Homes Foundation. Chloe was listed as the communications coordinator, and, at the top of the board of directors, was a very familiar name. Veronica Langston, my mother-in-law. I pushed back from the desk, heart pounding. Chloe wasn't just someone, she worked for Ethan's mother. That changed everything. If Veronica knew, if his family knew, then why the silence? And why was I the last to know? I closed my eyes, trying to breathe. Now I wasn't sure of anything. And what hurt the most was not knowing if I even wanted the answers. I used to think I knew Ethan better than anyone. I knew his habits, rinsing his coffee mug right after drinking it, hating when people didn't use turn signals, always sleeping on his left side. I thought if anyone could notice even the smallest shift in him, it would be me. But it turns out, those shifts weren't small. After receiving the photos, I said nothing to Ethan for 2 days. I watched, I listened, and I remembered. The way he glanced at his phone and flipped it over. The way he smiled without meeting my eyes. The way he touched my back, like going through the motions of something that no longer meant anything. On Wednesday night, I invited him to dinner at home. His favorite pasta dish, paired with a light wine he never turned down. I didn't raise my voice. I sat across from him, smiled, and asked, "I heard Chloe Matthews works with your mom?" Ethan looked up, caught off guard for a moment, but regained his composure quickly. "Oh, yeah, she's new, works in communications. You know her?" "Not really. But I saw pictures of you two at the Rosewood Hotel," in an anonymous email. Ethan set down his wine glass. A small gesture, but his hand trembled. "You're believing random people on the internet now?" I looked at him, waiting. "Chloe works for my mom. We've had to collaborate on a few projects," he exhaled, shrugged. "Maybe someone's jealous, trying to stir drama. You know how competitive the nonprofit world is, just like corporate." "In Portland?" I asked gently. He gave a hollow laugh. "I told you, it was work. Don't you trust me anymore?" I looked into the eyes of the man I once trusted without question. "I never said I don't trust you," I replied, standing to clear the dishes. "I want to understand the things I seem to be the last to know." That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I stayed on the couch, holding my stomach, thinking about the baby, thinking about a truth my heart already knew, before my mind could accept it. The next morning, I called the office of Veronica Langston, my mother-in-law, and formally requested a meeting. "I'd like to discuss something regarding Chloe Matthews," I said, strictly professional. Her voice, as always, was cold and polite. "Fine, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, my office." The Brighter Homes headquarters was a sleek 3-story glass building, elegant and meticulously arranged. I walked in like a stranger, even though my name had once been printed on the invitations to their annual galas. The receptionist led me to a small conference room where Veronica was already waiting, buttoned into a gray tweed blazer without a single thread out of place. "Lauren, what would you like to ask?" I opened my phone and showed her the pictures. "I don't want to believe this, but please help me tell the difference between the truth and a misunderstanding." Veronica glanced at the screen briefly, then placed the phone down. "You're not the first, Lauren." I looked up. That sentence cut through the last fragile thread of trust I was holding on to. "Can you explain?" She adjusted her collar, her voice calm. 2 years ago, Ethan got involved with a woman named Miranda. She was a contract attorney on a housing law project. Young, smart, and didn't know boundaries. When the situation reached the board, I had to step in, transfer her, clean up every trace. For the family, for the reputation Ethan hadn't yet destroyed. I heard every word and felt no anger, just emptiness. "And Chloe?" I asked. Veronica sighed. "I only found out a few weeks ago, but I can't handle it the same way this time. Chloe isn't just an outsider, she's connected to one of our major donors." Each answer felt like another brick stacked between me and my husband. "Did you ever think of telling me?" I asked. "Or telling Ethan to stop?" Veronica held my gaze longer than I anticipated. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lauren, you're a good woman, but sometimes being good isn't enough to keep a man. If you think you're going to change Ethan, you're fighting a battle with no end." I rose to my feet and picked up my bag. "I didn't come here to ask Ethan to come back," I said. "I came to confirm that I'm not crazy, not paranoid, not imagining things. And thank you, because you helped me do that." Veronica didn't stop me. She only lowered her head, as if completing one final duty to her future former daughter-in-law. When I walked out of the building, the Seattle sky was overcast, drizzling lightly. I looked up into the gray sky. I didn't ask myself, was it my fault? Because now I knew. The truth doesn't change, no matter who tries to bury it. And sometimes, the people you least expect are the ones who saw it all along. They just chose silence. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer on a damp Monday morning, right after Seattle endured a week of nonstop rain. His office was on the 8th floor of an old brick building, filled with the scent of wood and leather. Like everything inside was designed to calm people in the middle of chaos. His name was Martin Heller, around 60, slightly stooped, spoke slowly but never evasively. Rachel had referred me to him earlier, saying, "He won't promise to make it painless, but he'll make it fair." I sat across from him, hands gripping the cup of tea his assistant had brought in. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe a shred of hope that I was wrong, that there was something still left to hold on to. But Martin opened a folder, flipped a few pages, and looked at me with an expression that didn't hide his regret. "Lauren," he began, "we reviewed the updated prenuptial file from last year, between you and Ethan. There's an amendment, no signature from you, but Ethan signed, along with a representing attorney." I blinked, leaning in slightly. "You said there's no signature from me?" "Correct. But legally, if Ethan can prove that you two had a verbal agreement on the changes, it could still be considered valid, especially if there are indicators. Joint accounts, asset transfers, or recordings, which I'm afraid he may have prepared in advance." I couldn't speak. A year ago, Ethan had vaguely mentioned that we should optimize assets in case we have a child. And I naively nodded and said, "I trust you're doing what's best for the family." Now I understood. He wasn't planning for a child. He was planning his exit, without losing too much. I tightened my hands around my stomach, where the baby hadn't yet taken shape, but was already part of me. My body. My blood. I no longer said our baby. From the moment I learned the truth, in my heart it became my child. Mine alone. Martin met my eyes, his expression gentling. "The good news is," he said, "he didn't cover his tracks well enough. The lack of your signature is a strong counterpoint, and if you have proof of infidelity, the divorce outcome would likely favor you." I didn't ask anything else, because I knew exactly what I needed, a way out strong enough that I'd never need to look back. That night, after Ethan left for the gym, a schedule he rarely missed unless there was an urgent meeting, I sat at the desk in the living room, opened the leather notebook I used to write down dinner menus, and began the first page of what I would later call Pregnancy Journal from a War Zone. Week 6, Day 1. "My love, today I learned that your father doesn't want to keep me in his life anymore. But you will never be a concession. You are a presence. You are the reason I get up each morning, even when I want to collapse." I wrote that line, then closed the notebook, not to mourn, but to mark the moment. From now on, I wouldn't be someone waiting for pity. I would be someone who chooses how to rise. The next morning, I called an old family friend who used to work in private investigation, Kelly Brooke, now running a small civil investigations office, mostly handling property dispute cases. "I don't need to catch them in bed," I told her directly. "I need something the court won't be able to dismiss. Photos, recordings, timelines, receipts, and..." I paused. "I want to know about Chloe Matthews." Kelly didn't ask why. She said, "I'll need at least 2 weeks, but if they're sloppy, it could be sooner." "Ethan isn't sloppy," I said. "He's overconfident." 3 days later, Kelly sent me a copy of the credit card statement for Ethan's private account, the one I didn't even know existed. It listed a hotel room charge at the Rosewood, a dinner at an upscale steakhouse in Portland, and a purchase from Adele & Co. Jewelers, known for their custom engagement rings. I stared at the amount, $7,800. "It's definitely not for his mother," Kelly texted dryly along with the documents. I didn't feel pain anymore, just emptiness, like standing in a room once full of memories, but now completely drained of air. Nothing left to hold on to, but nothing more to lose either. And that's when I knew I'd already made it more than halfway out of this marriage. I returned to Martin's office that Friday afternoon, handing over everything: documents, photos, receipts, a call log from a landline Ethan had used to contact Chloe under a fake name. "We have enough," Martin nodded, his eyes sharpening. "We're not going to play dirty, but we'll hit where it counts. And this time, Lauren, you hold the scale." My mother arrived on a Saturday morning on the earliest flight from Columbus. She stepped into the house in a beige wool coat, heels slightly worn at the base, and that familiar critical gaze she hadn't bothered to hide. I knew she hated flying. I also knew she wasn't here out of concern. She was here because she couldn't stand being the last to know. "Lauren," she said the moment I opened the door, "you weren't going to call me? I had to hear from Aunt Clara that you're pregnant and getting divorced?" I brought her into the living room, poured tea, moving as calmly as if I were preparing for a tense board meeting. I used to imagine that when I had a child, my mother would pat my back and say, "I'm proud of you." But she was never that kind of mother. For her, everything had to be by the book. Marriage first, then a child, a separate house, a proper financial plan, and absolutely nothing out of order. "You really plan to raise the baby alone?" she asked, her voice flat like she was reading from a checklist. "Ethan is the father, isn't he? Are you really going to let the child grow up without a father figure?" I lifted my teacup, lips trembling slightly but still smiling. "If that figure is betrayal, then I think it's better there's nothing at all." She leaned in, staring at me. "You're not being realistic, Lauren. How much does an art teacher make? A child needs more than love. It needs stability, money, a complete family." I set the cup down. "And what counts as complete, Mom? A mother who tolerates and a father who cheats?" The air thickened. I saw her brows knit together, her hand tightening on her purse like she was holding back something sharp. "I'm not here to argue," she said softly, "but I don't want to watch you ruin your life over something called pride." I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I understood. Somewhere deep inside, my mother was still living in a marriage she once dreamed of escaping but never dared to leave. She didn't understand that I wasn't walking away in anger. I was walking away because I refused to live the life she did. Ethan showed up 2 days later. No heads up. The doorbell rang as I folded the baby clothes Rachel had dropped off. He waited on the porch with a bouquet of white tulips and a box of crème brûlée from the bakery I once adored. His hair was freshly cut, shirt crisp, and his remorse carefully staged. "Can I come in?" he asked. I opened the door, said nothing, just turned away, letting him decide whether or not to enter. Ethan followed me into the kitchen, glancing around the house that used to be ours, now stripped of all familiar traces. The wedding photo once hung in the hallway was gone. The coat he used to toss over the sofa was replaced by a knitted blanket I'd made myself. "I'm sorry," he began, like those 3 words could rearrange the architecture of betrayal. "I lost my way, but you're carrying my child. We can start over. For the baby." I turned to face him. "It's not we who are carrying, I am. And this baby isn't a reason to keep a man who planned his exit a year ago." Ethan placed the flowers on the table. "I know I messed up, but I'm trying to fix it. You don't have to forgive me, but don't let the baby grow up without a father." His voice shook. I used to believe in that tremble. But now I knew he was performing, or worse, panicking because he was losing control. I was about to speak when my phone buzzed, a message from Kelly, the investigator I'd hired. I opened it, eyes scanning the short line. "Reports in. Chloe is pregnant. 8 weeks. DNA confirms Ethan is the father. Soft copy attached." I inhaled sharply. My heart pounded. Every final piece had locked into place. I handed the phone to Ethan, the file still open on screen. He took it. "Read." His lips parted slightly, like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. She said she'd keep it quiet," he whispered. "She said she wasn't sure." "Wasn't sure?" I let out a dry laugh. "Not sure who the father is, or not sure if you'd have the guts to admit it?" Ethan sank into the chair, head in hands. "Lauren," he croaked, "I didn't know it would go this far. This isn't going anywhere, Ethan. It's over." He looked up. "I still want to be the baby's father. No matter what, I want to be part of its life. My child won't need a man who only shows up because he's forced to. It will have a mother strong enough to stand alone. And if one day it wants to know about you, I'll tell the truth. No more, no less." I didn't tell him to leave, but he understood. And this time he stood up on his own, walked out of the house, without saying another word. I sent the invitation like it was a casual family dinner. A short, plain message. Saturday, 6 p.m. I want us to have dinner together. Ethan, Mom, and Chloe. There's something we need to make clear. Ethan replied within minutes. I'll be there. Veronica called. Lauren, is it really necessary to invite her? I answered calmly. Yes, if we want this to end without more performances. Chloe said nothing, just left a thumbs up emoji on the screen, like this was a birthday party, not the final dissection of a life I once believed in. I started preparing early Saturday morning, not to impress, but because I needed this setting to be deliberate, so no one could dodge what was coming. The table was set with white porcelain dishes trimmed in gold. The set Veronica had given me as a wedding gift, along with the line, "This is the only thing in your kitchen worth letting people see." I polished them, placed each one precisely, a quiet reminder, I had once been the dutiful daughter-in-law. And now? I was still composed, just no longer silent. At 6:02 the doorbell rang. Ethan arrived first, gray shirt, empty-handed. Seconds later, Veronica appeared with a bottle of Italian wine. Chloe followed, tight dress, red lipstick and perfume, lingering through my hallway like a declaration. I opened the door, welcomed them in, gentle, as if nothing had changed. "Thank you for coming," I said, then led them to the dining table. As we started the main course, honey mustard roast chicken with mashed potatoes, I spoke. "We're not going to pretend this is a cheerful dinner. I think we all know why I invited you." Ethan set down his fork, trying to keep his voice even. "Lauren, if this is about the mistakes I made." "This isn't about mistakes," I cut in. "It's about deliberate choices." I picked up the tablet I'd placed beside me and hit play. A voice recording played. Ethan's voice, warm, smooth, and cruel. "She still doesn't know. I just need more time. At least until we find out who's having a boy. That'll make everything easier to manage." Silence settled over the dinner table. Veronica sat up straight, her already cold face now completely blank. Chloe froze, her eyes wide as she stared at Ethan. "You really said that?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He looked at me, mouth opening and closing like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I turned to Veronica. "I figured you knew, but maybe you've never heard him say it out loud." Veronica set down her wine glass. "Lauren, if you think blowing this up will help you keep Ethan..." "I'm not trying to keep him," I said, my voice soft but firm. "I'm trying to let go, but the right way." I got up, retrieved the folder I'd prepared, and set it down in front of Ethan. Divorce papers. Terms have been reviewed by both attorneys. I'll keep the house, you keep your shares in the company. I'm not asking for financial support, just one condition. From now on, all communication goes through lawyers. Ethan didn't move. Chloe started crying. "I didn't know he said that. I thought..." "You thought you were special?" I cut in, locking eyes with her. "So did I." Veronica closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, she said, "So you've arranged everything. A perfectly staged performance." "It's not a performance," I replied gently. "It's a conclusion." Ethan lowered his head, twisting the corner of his napkin until it crumpled in his hand. "Lauren," he began, but I didn't let him finish. "I believed in you. So much that I thought if I was patient enough, kind enough, quiet enough, you'd stay. But now I know. I don't need to hold on to someone who doesn't want to stay." No one said a word. The room felt frozen, like a still lake under ice. In the end, it was Ethan who stood up first. He didn't take anything with him, just nodded once, silently, like a man realizing too late that he'd lost something he never understood he had. Chloe followed behind, eyes red, leaving without a word. Veronica was the last to rise. She stood, slowly picked up her purse and stepped closer to me. "My daughter," she began. The first time she'd ever called me that. But I didn't wait for her to finish. I stepped back half a pace, maintaining enough distance. "Have a good evening, Mom," I said, and I closed the door behind them. In the quiet that remained, all I could hear was the soft crackle of candlelight, the lingering scent of roast chicken, and my own heartbeat, steady, no longer shattered. 1 week after that final dinner, I received a letter from Ethan. Not an email, not a text. A cream-colored envelope, thick paper, the familiar slant of his handwriting. The same script he used on Christmas cards, or little notes on the fridge when we still called ourselves husband and wife. I opened it in silence, sitting alone at the dining table, where he had once sat across from me the night the truth was exposed in candlelight. I heard Lauren. I don't know where to begin. Maybe there aren't any words left. I destroyed everything. Not our marriage, but the chance to be a real father. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I want one thing. If one day you allow it, I'd like to meet the baby. Just once. To know they exist. To know that I once had something beautiful I didn't know how to keep. I won't call. I won't intrude. But if you're reading this, thank you. And if you burn it, I understand. Ethan. I folded the letter, my hand steady, but my heart ached. Not with hope, but with the kind of loss that lingers in words that come too late. That night, I took out a fresh sheet of paper, a different kind of letter, not to respond to Ethan, but to write what needed to be written. For myself. And for my child. Ethan, I read your letter, and for a brief moment I thought I was moved, but then I realized I'm not sad because you apologize. I'm sad because you always show up too late. You act only after everything has fallen apart. You loved me after I had already left in silence. You said sorry after I had stopped waiting, and now you want to be a father, when I've already become a mother without you. My child will grow up with the truth. Not a twisted one, not one soaked in bitterness, but a whole truth, that their father existed, caused pain, and didn't have the courage to stay. I won't badmouth you, but I won't defend you either, because my child doesn't need a half-present father. They need a world they can believe in. And I'll build that from the pieces you left behind, not for you, for me. Lauren. I folded the letter and sealed it in an envelope. On the front I wrote, "Do not send." Then I opened the drawer in my bedroom, the small one, where I'd begun to collect things for the baby not yet born. The tiny knitted sweater Rachel had made, the first ultrasound photo, the pregnancy journal, and now 2 letters. One from Ethan, one from me. 2 pieces of memory, one beginning with, "I'm sorry," the other ending with, "I don't need you anymore." I knew there would come a day when my child would ask, "Who is my father?" And I also knew the day would come when I'd open this box, show them what remained, not to make them resentful, but to help them understand what I chose to hold on to and what I chose to let go of. For them. That night, I sat by the window, the warm lamplight falling gently on my growing belly. I placed a hand on it and whispered, "You'll not grow up in a lie, I promise." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, like the sound of someone letting go with a quiet sigh. The art room at the community center sat just behind a laundromat. The ceiling was a little low, the pale green walls peeling in places. The tables and chairs didn't match. Some too tall, some too wobbly, some stained with ink that would never come off. But to me, it was the first place where I truly felt like myself again. I taught the afternoon teen class, kids between 12 and 15, many from homes as chaotic as mine had been. Some lived with their grandparents. Some had to babysit 3 siblings after school. Some sat in silence drawing spirals that never seemed to end. On the 3rd week, while I was showing a group how to mix skin tones using 3 base paints, a girl named Ava, short brown hair sitting in the back corner, suddenly asked, "Lauren, are you sad that you're having a baby without the dad around?" The question made me pause, my paintbrush still hovering over the palette. The room went completely silent. I looked at Ava. She wasn't being rude. She asked because she was curious, because she genuinely wanted to understand. I set the brush down and sat beside her. "I used to hurt Ava," I said softly, "but I never felt alone, because sometimes you can be with someone and still feel lonely. And sometimes you think you've lost someone, but really, you've found yourself." Ava nodded slowly, then went back to painting. And I knew, maybe Ava wasn't the only one who needed to hear that. From that day, I started painting again. Not for commissions, not because anyone asked, but because my hands itched every time light poured through the window. I set up an old easel in the corner of my bedroom, right beside the crib I'd assembled the week before. And I began with the closest things: my aching feet after each class, my paint-stained hands, my belly growing rounder by the day. I painted slices of a woman learning to love her body again, her soul again, her story again. One night, while I was still painting late, Rachel stopped by with an apple pie and a bag of sliced mangoes. "What are you painting now?" she asked, grabbing a bite of pie and plopping onto the floor. I turned the easel toward her. A half-finished painting of a woman standing in the middle of a desert, her dress torn by the wind, but her gaze lifted high. Behind her, shadowy figures blurred like they were fading into the distance. "Calling it Coming Back from Far Away," I said with a small smile, not sure how it'll turn out, but I don't think she needs to look back. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, then stood and pulled me off my chair. "Come with me," she said. "I have something to give you." We walked to the parking lot behind the community center. She stopped in front of an old green Subaru, faded paint, a few scratches on the body, but brand new plates. "This is—" I stared at her, eyes wide. "My aunt's old car," Rachel said. "She moved into assisted living. Doesn't need it anymore. I fixed it up, transferred the title, and now it's yours." I stepped back. "Rachel, I can't." "Lauren," she cut in, her eyes serious but gentle. "You're about to have a baby, and your daughter deserves to see the world beyond a kitchen window. You can't bike around with that belly forever. Take it." I stared at the car, then at my best friend, the one who stayed when Ethan left, who never asked questions but always showed up. "Thank you," I whispered. "Not for the car, but for never leaving." Rachel smiled. "I always knew you'd get everything back in your own way. I just helped you restart." From that day on, every weekend I drove the Subaru along the lakeside roads, stopping wherever the light was beautiful and the sky felt wide. Sometimes I'd just park to watch the sunset, play soft jazz, and rest my hand on my belly, where my child shifted quietly but vibrantly. I also received an invitation from a small gallery in the Fremont area, the same one that rejected me 3 years ago for being too somber. Now they said, "We saw your paintings going around on social media, especially the mother at the crossroads. We'd love to feature the whole collection." The girl with paint in her hair and an old car, the one who once collapsed on her bedroom floor after being betrayed, was now rising, inch by inch, without anyone pulling her up, without needing to prove a thing. Ivy was born on a March morning, while soft Seattle rain tapped gently against the hospital window. A silver-gray light blanketed everything, gentle as a whispered blessing. I thought I would cry the moment I heard her first cry, but I didn't. When they placed her on my chest, skin to skin, her first breath syncing with my chaotic heartbeat, I simply exhaled. Light, deep, steady, as if I'd been holding my breath for months, just to reach that moment. "I be Lauren Carter," I whispered, stroking her silky mist-fine hair. "Your name is Ivy, a plant that clings, doesn't fall, doesn't break. And Lauren, so you'll always carry a part of your mother." She furrowed her brow and made a tiny sound, as if responding, and in that instant I knew I would never be the same woman again. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Everything went smoothly. Ivy nursed well, slept soundly, cried only in soft whimpers as if she somehow knew I was still tired. Rachel was the first to visit. She walked in with a bouquet of wildflowers and eyes filled with tears. "You did it," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "No," I said, "we did." Rachel laughed, then gently lifted Ivy into her arms, whispering to her like she was her own niece. On the 3rd day, I sat with Ivy in my arms, staring out the hospital window. The rain had stopped. The first sunlight of March slipped down like a sheer golden curtain. I wasn't thinking about Ethan. I wasn't thinking about the letter or any memory that once hurt. I was thinking about now and what comes next. After returning home, I started writing. Not in my journal, but an actual essay, a personal story, a piece of truth. Not angry, not bitter, not romanticized. I wrote during the nights when Ivy dozed lightly on my chest, my fingers tapping the keyboard slowly but with purpose. I didn't know who would read it. I didn't expect anything. I wrote to close a chapter. 3 days after the piece was published in a small digital magazine focused on women and mental health, I received an email from a nonprofit called Rise Women Collective. They invited me to speak at their annual conference, a session titled Rebirth After Ruin. I read the message 3 times, then set the phone down and walked over to Ivy's crib. "What do you think?" I asked. "Should we tell our story?" Of course, Ivy didn't answer. She clutched my finger, her eyes half closed, serene in a way that calmed everything in me. The following week, I flew to Chicago. Rachel came with me, holding Ivy while I rehearsed my speech in the hotel room. "You don't have to make it perfect," Rachel said as I kept tweaking every line. "You just have to make it honest." That morning, I stepped onto the stage in a long, pale blue dress. The kind of color I once thought too soft for someone who had carried so much heaviness. But standing there, looking out at the front row where Rachel and Ivy sat, I understood. I wasn't wearing blue to forget the past. I wore it to carry the future. My hands trembled as I held the microphone. "Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Carter," I began. "I used to be a wife, and then I became a mother, in a way no one hopes for, but in the most beautiful way I could have imagined." I spoke about the nights I thought I'd fall apart, about the letters I never sent, about the dinner where I chose to let go with calm and clarity. Then I glanced toward the back of the room, where Rachel held Ivy on her lap, the little girl in a tiny polka dot dress, wide eyes watching her mother stand in front of strangers.
I smiled. "I'm not telling this story to be seen as strong," I said. "I'm telling it to remind those of you sitting here who've ever felt like you had to hold it all together no matter what, that sometimes you don't have to be the hero. You have to be a mom." After the talk, an older woman came up and held my hand. "I got divorced in 1984, she said. "No one listened to me back then. Today, hearing you speak, it felt like someone finally went back in time and told me, you weren't wrong." I squeezed her hand, my eyes stinging, but my heart warm. That night, back at the hotel, I held Ivy in my arms and softly hummed a lullaby without a name. The light fell gently into her crib, casting a warm circle around her soft, downy hair. I whispered, as much to myself as to her, "You weren't born from a happy marriage. You were born from a mother who knew she deserved more." And that was enough. What do you think of my journey with Ivy? I know every woman heals from heartbreak in her own way. Some choose silence, some choose forgiveness, and some, like me, choose to rise, not to get revenge, but to walk in a different direction for ourselves and for the child who was never anyone's backup plan. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between holding on and letting go? If you have, I hope you'll share your story, not for judgment, but so we know we're not alone. And if you believe that family, no matter how broken its beginning, can still grow into something full of love and meaning, hit subscribe to follow the next stories about courageous women, quiet mothers, and the small moments that can change an entire life.